Hi there, this is Dilys Gayan, and welcome to the Inspired Selling Podcast, the place where business owners discover how to find, attract, convert, and treasure, fact, more of their ideal clients. And I've got a fabulous guest with us today in Sue Barrett. And Sue's manifesto really is selling better. And she's going to talk to us really about being proud to be called a salesperson, even if you're not employed as a salesperson and you're running your own business. So let me just tell you a little bit about Sue, and then we can really get into it. And I'm so excited to talk to Sue and take a deeper dive on this subject. So Sue represents one of the world's oldest professions, and no, it's not the one you're probably thinking about. It's the other one. That also has a much maligned reputation, and she represents the profession of selling. And sadly, it's been hijacked by the bad behaviours of a few, leaving a really negative perception of selling and salespeople as a whole. The reason I'm delighted to speak to Sue is because she really is one of the most authoritative thought leaders reporting on and working in the selling profession in Australia. She's written more than 600 blogs and 21 ebooks, so a real master of her craft. She's trained and coached over 25,000 salespeople and 7,000 business leaders about sales performance, strategy, culture, sales, and sales leadership. And as I mentioned at the beginning there, Sue's manifesto is about selling better. And what I hear, and I'm sure Sue has too, is that many people will say, well, I don't really want to be seen as a salesperson. I don't want to be seen as being pushy. And good selling is the exact opposite of that. So welcome, Sue. And I'd like really for us to take a deeper dive just on that to start with.
Thank you, Dilys. It's an absolute pleasure to be here. And yes, it is a thorny topic because unfortunately the brain is wired for risk, and it's always going to look, if it sees danger first, it's what it will react to. And I'm afraid that there's a few people who've hijacked the profession of selling, and we only see what I call the devious, the dubious, and the desperate types that often get portrayed out in the media, in movies. I mean, they're interesting stories, they're fascinating and very dangerous, but the vast majority of people are not like that when it comes to selling. So I'm actually making a stand for the rest of us who have talents and capabilities, ideas, initiatives, whether it's internal inside an organization or we want to take something to market. Everybody lives by selling something. And that's an interesting quote in itself, because it's not a quote that I've coined. It's actually a quote from Robert Louis Stevenson, who hails from your side of the world and lived in the latter part of the 1800s, born in Scotland. And we all know him best for his novels, Treasure Island, Kidnapped, Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde, those sorts of things. But a lot of people don't know that he actually travelled the world when it was really hard to do so. And he met all sorts of people, and he was a really keen observer of the human condition, how people interacted with each other, how they worked with each other. And one of his keen observations was that everybody lives by selling something, whether it was exchanging an idea, trading something, or whatever. He just made that observation. So he's kind of like our patron saint at Barrett, and I really like the way that he thinks about people and about humans and about how we interact. So it was really interesting when my eldest son, Josh, was 11. He's now 19. And he said to me, Mum, I don't believe everybody lives by selling something. And I said, well, that's really interesting. Why do you say that? And then he tried to persuade and convince me why it wasn't true. And I said, but by the very nature of you trying to persuade and convince me, aren't you trying to sell me something? He went, oh, yeah. So
fantastic.
Exactly.
That,
So I look at selling actually as a life skill. So whenever I talk to people in organizations who aren't called salespeople, I ask them the question, have you ever tried to get an idea across to someone else? Have you ever tried to bring a new initiative to your team or something like that? And everyone puts their hand up. some more than others, of course,
Yeah.
have tried. I said, well, how did it go for you? How did you engage these people? How did you stop them doing what they were doing then, and to actually stop and pay attention to you? And how did you present that information in such a way that was of interest to that person and made sense to that person? And they all start scratching their heads and realizing that, oh, actually, I have, well, it went well sometimes and it didn't go well other times. I go, well, that's good selling. I mean, this is what selling is all about.
Mm.
So a lot of the people I meet who are ignorant, ill-informed, or irritated by selling are often actually part of the sales process or themselves having to sell. It's just that the negative stereotype of the devious, dubious, and the desperate gets in the way of them truly embracing and taking on this concept and actually really having a great time with it, because when you harness all the skills and capabilities that go with it, you can actually do great things. And I would like more of the good people out there who can embrace these qualities to do great things, because that's how we change the world for the better. And we take it away from those people who are after doing harm to others.
Mm.
And
Yeah.
that's what I'm on about.
And that's a real sort of a great synopsis of this attitude towards selling. And I also would like to add to that particularly business owners who are passionate about their subject or their product or service, whatever, is that they really need to stop for a moment and think about the negative side of not selling and not giving people the opportunity to say yes to their product or service, or no, not right now. And that true value that they bring, because it's not the product or the service, is it? It's the impact that has, the problems that are solved or objectives that are achieved. And I know that you have a big belief in exchange of value for both buyer and seller.
Yeah.
Could you just expand on that for us?
Absolutely. I always believe that healthy relationships are based on a fair exchange of value, whatever the relationship is. Now, it doesn't mean that the relationships are all sweet and lovely and friendly, because sometimes you have to, challenge an idea. I mean, all relationships are a form of compromise in some way. So it's the good relationships are designed to be stress tested. So I find that too many people, are anxious about getting in touch with people and think, they don't really value what I do. Well, they don't know how to value what you do until you get in front of them, number one. Secondly, if you don't know how to speak about what you do in a way that helps someone else, that they can see how they can benefit or de-risk themselves, whatever, by working with you, then they're just going to see you sort of dishing up sort of an array of objects that aren't necessarily going to serve a purpose. But ultimately, at the end of the day, you have to stand up for what you do. You have to stand up for the value that you deliver. And if you don't do that, then who will? And I think that most customers don't try and dupe their suppliers. Most people don't want to be in an awkward sort of deceptive or exploitative relationship. They'd actually like to be able to look you in the eye. I mean, that's how most relationships work. There are some, of course, who'll take advantage of you, but if you know how to stand up for yourself and you know how to assess a client's situation, you both work out, can we make this work together or not, in part or in full? And if we can, however it configures, what's the fair exchange of value there? Because, I'd like to keep working with you. And I hope you would like to keep working with me. And if we can form that relationship on a basis of fairness, then I think we're in a much better position to evolve and keep moving forward. So like I said, the vast majority of people don't like ripping people off. We're actually born for fairness. Yeah. If you watch little children, regardless, that we're born for fairness, we're born for curiosity, and we're born for helpfulness. And when those contracts are breached or broken, people don't like it either way. Now, there are the people who like to exploit those things, but they're not the norm. The rest of us actually want to know, do I feel good about doing this? Because if you're ripping someone off, if you're doing that, and it doesn't feel good, and you don't want to look them in the eye.
Yeah.
So I'm actually going for the human biology of this, because all relationships, we, as a community, we want fairness for each other.
So if we look at the business person, the business owner, who's either doing their own selling or they may have a small sales team, where do they start to identify their own value? Because what I see is that people, in fact, don't stop to look at that and dig deeper on that. They are sort of still at the surface of this is what I sell. So they go straight into talking about their product. So what would your advice be, practical advice, in terms of being able to sit down and identify their value?
Okay. I look at whatever you have to offer is how does it help someone else? So you must look at your business from your client's perspective first. I've got this array of things I can do, but what does it ultimately do for someone else? How do they, how are they better off? So if you look at the world from that perspective, I mean, let's put it this way, Dilys, who are most companies' brochures, as in their website, whatever they got, who are they written for? Themselves or their clients?
Themselves.
Exactly. And that is the main problem, because they're basically creating a shopping list of how gorgeous and wonderful they are and whatever they've got, right?
Yes.
That is not going to help anyone. What they have to do is talk to the customer. So the simplest way I can describe what I do is I help people and businesses sell better. All right, that's the simplest way. And it doesn't talk about all the things that I do to do that. It talks about what the outcome is. Can they sell more and better with less risk? Can they make more informed decisions about how to lead and manage their sales team and operation? Can they run a better business where they attract and retain the clients, employees that they want? That's what I do. But that's got nothing to do about my training program or strategy audits. It's nothing. Can you see how it's written?
Yeah.
So this is how people must start to look at how they present their information, so that the customer or prospective customer, when they look at your website or whatever, goes, oh my God, that's me. And then they call you, and then you can ask questions about where they're at on that spectrum of capability or sophistication around what you do. And that's when, once you've assessed that, you can then pull out of your little Lego box of stuff how you're going to help them and, patch together your resources. Because that's how we help each other. Is that practical enough?
Yeah, that's brilliant. And, I talk about getting into your prospective client's shoes.
Yeah.
And that's really what you're talking about there, isn't it?
Yes.
And thinking about, so where are they without my product or service?
Yes.
What problems are they experiencing without my product or service?
Yeah.
And what's the impact of that? And you're absolutely right. You've hit the nail right on the head. And I love that phrase where people read your marketing copy and go, goodness me, you must be able to read my mind, because that's exactly me.
Yeah.
And it's that emotional move, isn't it, where somebody reads that and says that person, that provider, that seller understands me.
Well, this is the thing, you see, a lot of these people who start their own business, they've come from an area of technical expertise, whatever that is, right? And they've studied it and they know it inside out and back to front. And most of the time when clients come to us is because they don't have this expertise. And so if we put up what we know expertise-wise, it's like gobbledygook to the uneducated. Now, admittedly, with the internet, we can get more educated and things are becoming more transparent. But still, at the end of the day, even if I do understand what you do better, I'm actually ringing you because I probably don't have the time to do it myself, or I need you to facilitate something for me to get it over the line. So I always think about clients, when you write for them in terms of presenting yourself and then you engage with them, your questions uncover how sophisticated or not they are in your area of expertise. And that acts as a guide as to how much education you need to give them, or more facilitation you need to give them when it comes to working with them. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Can you give us an example of that, Sue? Because I know that my audience love an example.
Okay, so for example, let me think here. I'll just think about businesses that might come to me. Now, I can deal with large, big businesses, and I can meet sophisticated sales directors who understand the business and sales operating system of selling. So when they're looking to sell better, however that is, I ask them questions, and immediately I'll know if they have the language and capability and background knowledge and expertise, so that I don't have to go into detailed explanation. We kind of already have a common ground of language we can speak on, whether it's market segmentation, sales strategy, or whatever it might be. But then I can meet smaller businesses who haven't been studying sales operating systems like I have. They just know they need to sell more or sell better or whatever it is. So when I ask them questions, they might speak in more simple terms about, look, my salespeople just aren't making enough sales. I have to ask them these questions and understand. And they might go, oh, what does that look like? And then I've got to be able to show them things. So it kind of just helps you calibrate and understand, because it would be patronizing for me to go into that detailed explanation with a very sophisticated sales director.
Yeah.
Now, it doesn't mean they know everything, and I've got to, unearth some things there, but it would be really mind-boggling for the person down the other end of the spectrum of sophistication for me to speak as if they knew what I was talking about at that high level. So, does that help?
Yes.
And yeah.
Yeah. And I'd really like to go back even further with because I used to work with the large international corporates.
Yes.
And it's really just in the last sort of 4 or 5 years that I changed my business model to bringing my skills and knowledge to the SME market, who are selling to bigger businesses. Purely because I was traveling around the world and I was shattered.
Yes.
So I thought, I can't keep doing this. And they are many, not all, but many of them are still in the position of finding that just picking up the telephone is difficult. So they rely on word of mouth, or they might go to some networking meetings. They don't very often have a strategy. It's more tactics. So they do a little bit of this, a little bit of that, and a little bit of the other. So if they've identified the problems that they solve, and the true value that they bring, how can we help them really harness this element of activity? That they need to know who their ideal clients are for a start, and then the strategy that needs to be put in place, and giving them the confidence to pick up that phone to start so they maybe sent an email, or maybe they've met someone at a networking meeting live or online, but to take it to that next step.
Okay. When smaller businesses are trying to target bigger businesses, strategy is the first place we have to start, because being small, you haven't got the field force to go kind of splat at a particular market. So what you've got to do is what I call micro segmentation. You've got to start to think about, okay, back to the strategy, what do we stand for? What do we deliver? How do we help people? Where is my part in the bigger system? Now, this is where a lot of people make the mistake, because they come along with their great idea and they kind of talk about it almost as a silver bullet. And we all live in systems. So people got to get their head to think around, my offering, if I'm going to sell to a bigger business, has to fit as part of a broader system. So I've got to understand that first. And I've got to understand the impact of what I'm doing on that broader system of that business. Or else why would they pay attention to me? Yeah. Okay, so there's that. Once you've understood that, then you've got to think about, okay, what are the types of clients that you want to work with? Because not all big clients are good clients. There's many a small business that's gone bankrupt because they think, oh, I've won a huge business, but their procurement practices are crap. You've got to de-risk, all of this stuff. You've got to look at, do they hold the conditions that actually I can work with? So back to this fair exchange of value. Because if their values as a business are exploitative, they're race to the bottom mentality, they don't want to work in partnership with you, then they're not a good client to work with.
Yeah.
Right. So this is all this determination of your strategy and the types of clients you want to work with. Once you get that, it actually starts to flush out the types of businesses actually that you should be working with. So then you can start to narrow it down to the type of business and then to names. And of course, databases like LinkedIn and stuff really start to help you find out who you should be in front of. So I say that people should start to make sure that they know where they want to be, the types of businesses that are ideal for them, look them up, and then you can start to make contact. Now, you can do all that research and still not know how to pick a phone up and call people. So the key to that is then that's practice. You and I both know about how many prospecting calls we have made in our lives. I mean, it would be thousands and hundreds of thousands, nearly tens of thousands at least, if not. And the only way you get good at prospecting is doing it, but you must make sure that you're very clear when you're calling someone. So if you've targeted them on LinkedIn and you've identified them, you know, you can phone them, you could send an email, if you have an email address. I do all three. I actually do it all at once. And I, if I want to call you, I might send you an email first. If I can get access to your mobile number, I'll call your mobile number. I leave a text message if you're not there. But all of it is around that central tenet of why I want to engage you and stop what you were doing now so you pay attention to me. So our valid business reason for connecting with each other, or with you, me to you, must be from your perspective again. So back to our original conversation that we had around who's your brochure written for, who's your prospecting, your message written for. So how's it going to help Dilys? How's it going to help her? Why should she want to call me back or take my call? And quite frankly, you've got 20 seconds if you get through. Hi, I'm Sue Barrett, calling from Barrett Consulting Group. We specialise in helping people and businesses sell better. The purpose of my call is ... And even if they say no, as in it's not time to speak now, you've still got to say what your purpose of your call is. But stop them doing what they're doing now and pay attention to you. And the only way you can do it is by doing it. And we know the research shows, there's over 50 years of empirical research that shows that people who prospect and generate opportunity are 5 times more productive than their hesitant colleagues. 5 times. Now, what's the worst thing that could happen when you ring them?
That's it.
They say no, go away.
Okay.
And you learn from that, and you do it again, and you do it again, and you do it again. Now, you've got to hopefully learn how you're doing it. But we all know it's numbers game, particularly we're in a state of flux at the moment, and it's very distracting out there. And so prospecting, people get kind of confused. They think, LinkedIn and social selling and rah-rah and all of that. I'm here to tell you right now that the phone is actually quite a novel experience, and that I would still pick up the phone and call people as my first option. And absolutely get in front of them that way if I can.
Completely. Honestly, I'm with you, Sue.
Yay!
I'm like a flipping evangelist, banging the drum. And a couple of things you said there. One is that it is about practice. And I remember when I first started many years ago as a financial advisor. I mean, this will blow your mind because we wouldn't even be allowed to do this now. But I worked for a bancassurer as a financial advisor, and I had to put together a list of 500 names from the telephone directory, names and addresses and telephone numbers, and submit it to the company before I started. And every week they sent out 60 letters to these people from the telephone directory who had no idea who I was, certainly didn't want to talk to me about life assurance or pensions or whatever it was at 7 o'clock at night, because I used to make 12 phone calls every single night without fail. And if I didn't do 12, if I did 8, I carried those 4 forward to the next night and me
Yep.
at 16 the following night. And actually, it was in those very early days that I realized that no one was interested in buying a life assurance policy or a pension or an income protection policy. What they wanted was the outcome. What they wanted was a financial safety net in place that would replace their income if it stopped for whatever reason.
And what a great VBR, what a great valid business reason to ring. You say what you've just said and you turn it into, I'm ringing to talk about these things, rather than an insurance policy.
Yeah.
That's exactly what you do. Exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, I actually, one of my jobs was prior to starting my business 23 years ago, I actually worked in sales recruitment. And I'm like you, I mean, I'm old enough to have a recyclable wardrobe, I say, and I'm old enough to have had to use the telephone book. We had no online resources and
That's
things
right.
like that.
Yeah.
We just had the phone and a telephone book. So I was recruiting salespeople for businesses, and it was a really interesting job. But I absolutely did my apprenticeship when I was working at this business. We had, numbers we had to do, and the more you did it, the better you got at it, and all that kind of stuff. So I'm with you. It's about how you go out there and actually generate opportunity by being proactive. And that's why we've got to be careful for a lot of the people that are listening, not to fall prey to thinking I only have to do an in-mail or an email or rely on inbound stuff, because unless you've got the best inbound marketing strategy, which you've got to have a mixture of both, but the telephone and prospecting is still king when it comes to generating opportunity. And as you said, the more we do it, the better we get, and it just becomes second nature to us, like anything. Like anything, you start to learn that. And like I said, the worst thing that they can say to you is no, bugger off, leave us alone, go away. And you think, oh, okay, I've got it. Why did that not work? How could I do it better? And just keep pressing forward.
Yeah, indeed. And my three things, and I do this with absolutely everything that I do. Even today, I do it. What went well? What didn't go so well? How can I do it better next time?
Exactly.
And practice, 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 practice.
Yeah.
And
actually,
sorry, go on.
No, I was going to say, when I started this business that I've been running now for 23 and a bit years, I remember the first week, I had nothing else to do but make prospecting phone calls. So I made, I don't know, I think it must have been 100 or so prospecting phone calls. And I started to get my first visits towards the end of the week. And at the end of the week, I got to a meeting. It must have been 2:00 in the afternoon. And it was a guy that knew of me but had never worked with me. So I sat down and I understood his requirements, and he wanted to run a sales conference. And I said, I can do that. I can help you with that. And so I actually got my very first sale at the end of the first week of being in business. Now, I'd made, as I said, at least probably 100 prospecting phone calls up until that point. But this was going to take a bit of time and planning. And I was going to have to devote some resources to it, which meant I was going to actually obviously put a bit of a hold on some of the prospecting efforts the following week. So I knew I needed to kind of balance the two. So I actually asked him. He was a lovely man. I remember his name was Mark. I said, Mark, thank you very much for this opportunity. You're my very first customer. Congratulations. And I shook his hand. And he said, great, fantastic. I said, I'm going to ask you a question, and you have every right to say no. But given I'm going to start this project for you, and you're our very first customer, and I've got to kind of keep the wheels turning, do you mind paying me up front? Now, you know of me.
Yeah.
But do you mind paying me up front so I can devote time to this project, as well as kind of keep the other wheels turning as I get my business underway? And it was $10,000. And he said, sure. And he wrote me a check. He wrote me a check right there. And then I went, yay. And I got to the bank in time, and I got to put it in my very first week. But you know what? If you never ask, the answer's always no.
Oh, Sue, absolutely right.
And I can't thank that guy, Mark, enough, because I just knew I'd be okay. But I had the courage and bravery to ask. I gave him the option to say no. He could have said no, but he went, no, sure, I understand that. Here's $10,000. It was a paper check, back in the olden days. Wrote me a paper check, took it to the bank, and I was off. So, but I still, next week, even though I was working on his project, I still made time every day for prospecting calls. And by that kind of the second and third week, I already had 16 meetings booked to go and meet new prospects. And I could work his project along the side of that, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
So I've learned that the discipline of making sure not a week goes by that you don't prospect, not a week goes by you don't have client meetings, not a week goes by that you don't have some sort of work. Because in the beginning, you've got that beginner's activity mix, which is basically selling. And then if you're in project work like I am, you've then got to balance the project work with your selling and your prospecting.
Yes.
Now, I have a team here, but I still sell, and I still make sure every week I'm doing some form of prospecting, and I'm out making, and depending on the week work, I'm doing client meetings. But my business and my team, every week, there's got to be, the diary has got to be filled with our collective sales activity.
Sue, that is perfect, because that's the message that I'm trying to get over, is that you have to be prospecting. You have to give people the opportunity to say yes or no, not right now. And that wheel has to keep turning. And it's not, to avoid the peaks and troughs of cash flow, you've got to keep that wheel turning every week. Got to be prospecting and having client meetings, making sales, delivering, but at the same time having that balance.
Actually, what's important, I think, for people to also work out is what their sales cycle timeline is. Because in my business, probably like yours, it can be anywhere from immediate to 3-6 months down the track, depending on the project. So they've got to work out what the general cycle is, because I talk about an activity year versus a financial year. So if your financial year, I think is yours April to March in the UK? Okay. So your financial year starts in April. So that's when you want dollars going ka-ching, beginning of April. But if your sales cycle is 3 months from hello, Glynis, Dillis to hello, to ka-ching, you've got to start prospecting for that April opportunity back in January, February. Does that make sense?
It absolutely does.
So at the beginning, when you start, you've got to kind of really run really fast, to get that kind of momentum going. But then understand that cycle, so that so I'm always thinking 3 months in advance, if that's the cycle. So I'm always thinking what's in the pipeline 3-4 months in advance. Whilst I'm doing what I'm doing now. So the prospecting calls I'm making today are for business that's potentially 3 months in the future.
And this kind of impacts also on tracking your business, tracking and measuring. And a lot of people don't have a tracking and measuring system in place. Sue, this has just been fabulous. And really, I'd like us to talk again at some other time and talk about the actual face-to-face meeting and the key elements of that. So if anyone wants to get in touch with you, Sue, how might they do that?
Well, I'm in Australia, so the web is probably the easiest. I would encourage you to go to Barrett, BARRET.com.au. And if you want to look at the Selling Better Manifesto, go to sellingbetter.com. And and I'm at Sue Barrett on Twitter if you want to find me there.
Brilliant. Sue, thank you so much. This has been really helpful. I've enjoyed every moment.
Oh, my pleasure, Dillis. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Thank you. Bye for now.
Cheers.